and welcome to the Content 10X podcast. I'm your host, Amy Woods, and I am delighted that you are joining me here today on the podcast as we continue on with part 3 of our webinar series. And of course, I'm joined by Hayley, who is co-hosting this series with me, Hayley Evans, who heads up our marketing operations and client account management here at Content 10X. So Hayley, it's great to have you here again for part 3 of this webinar series.
Thanks, Amy. It's great to be joining you again, and I can't believe we're at part 3 and personally one of my favourite episodes at the moment.
Yeah, we've got so much to say. We've had a lot to say in all of them. So in the first episode of this series, where we're just drilling down on B2B webinars, we talked about 8 reasons why webinars are so good, why they're so beneficial. And then in our second episode of the series, the last one, we talked about the planning of the webinar itself. So all the planning covering like the platforms and the tech and the timeline and the project planning of it all, and thinking about your audience and measurement and things like that for the webinar. And then in this episode, we're looking at how to promote and market the webinar and the all-important follow-up as well. And then next episode, we're going to get into the repurposing of the content itself. So you'll have no doubt of the benefits of webinars and you'll have no doubt how to plan. Let's work out the promotion on this. So Hayley, where should we start with this?
Yeah, this is so important because there is no point in running a webinar if you're not going to tell anybody that you're running a webinar. And unfortunately, over the years, we've seen, some brilliant clients of ours and friends of ours who've run webinars and have not put a huge amount of emphasis into the pre and post event promotion, which is hugely important, a massive part of this. So there is a lot to talk about for this episode and for webinar promotion. So firstly, you obviously want to make sure as many of your target audience as possible knows you're running this webinar so that they can attend, and you really want them to be interested too. What you want them to do is look and see this webinar coming on their feed or whatever social channel that they're on, or through emails, that they think, oh, I really want to attend this. So what we thought we'd do is we're actually going to start this episode with a brilliant clip from our client, Mike Derrico, head of marketing at Arix Technologies, about all the important aspects of choosing your webinar title, so how it's enticing and engaging. And we'll leave it to Mike.
Specifically in B2B, if you're going to do a webinar, there was a short form video that came across LinkedIn the other day, and it was like you should spend 90% of your time on a subject line for an email and 10% of the time on the body, right? Because if you can get them to open it, you've won the battle. Same thing with the first line before you click more on your LinkedIn post. Like that first line is everything. It should be one sentence, it should be short, and it should be irresistible. Like, people like, all right, I have to click it, I think webinar titles should be the same way, right? And what motivates someone in a business setting? It's very different than what motivates somebody in a personal setting, right? Well, like if you're working in direct to consumer. In B2B, folks are under pressure to maintain budget. They're under pressure to maintain efficiency and productivity. They're under pressure to make sure their department is staying ahead of problems. They're being proactive, right? So like if you have I'm speaking specifically about our product, improves safety, improves efficiency and productivity, and it's 70% cheaper than traditional means of doing inspections, and it can be 13 times faster. So if I can build that into a webinar title and just get them to register, right, and then deliver a really good presentation and quality, wow them with the first slide, just like you would with the subject line of an email or something similar. Bring them in and give them a shocking statistic that they weren't aware of, and then you've got their attention, and then delight them, right? Give them a great presentation, make it worth their time, and make it short. There's so much good content out there, but I can't log into another 3-hour podcast. I don't have time.
That was absolutely fantastic insight from Mike. Loved what he said, which is why we chose to pick that out from B2B Content Strategist and share it here. So I highly recommend listening to our full conversation actually with Mike, where he shared so much value over on B2B Content Strategist. So we'll share the link to that in the show notes. But I loved how he talked about knowing your audience and what they care about, and then your marketing and promo plan, it needs to define that target audience and the webinar goal, you use that knowledge to make the title really enticing, as Mike said, make it irresistible and beneficial to your audience. So in the same way that we should be thinking all about the subject line for our emails and things like that and hooks in social, it could not be more important with the webinar title. And then, of course, you need to be thinking about other promotion as well. You've got the title for it. Where do we start, Hayley? So there's all these different channels, and you'll be thinking, how do I, as you said, make sure that everybody in my audience and new audience as well know about this webinar?
Oh gosh, there's so much to think about, which is always super exciting personally. But your promotion plan needs to include absolutely everything. So think about all of the channels that you are using as a brand that are relevant specifically to you and your audience. I mean, social media is obviously hugely important. And for most B2B companies we work with, that's going to be mainly LinkedIn, but it could also include others. So whether you're on Substack or you're on X or you're on Instagram, it's totally up to you for your brand. But you need to plan your organic social content. So where we really like to start with this is looking at the analytics of your organic social. How are things currently performing in terms of vertical videos, RSLs, static formats? How have they performed in the past for the webinars that you've previously run, if you've also got access to that? So look at the analytics first and plan out the social content for that. And then look at, how you can promote on paid social too. As well as that, email campaigns are super, super important. And we always recommend, with organic and paid and email, to A/B test everything. This is where it's really, really important for us as marketers. Data is everything. And the more data that we've got, the better our future campaigns are going to be. But look at email campaigns as that, a campaign. I don't want to see a one-hit wonder webinar email, which we kind of quite often see. Our clients and our target audience need to see these webinars as a nurture campaign. So think about that as a funnel. Talk to your audience on a regular basis. So in the run up to the webinar, we're talking, 2 to 4 weeks out of a webinar to be planning this nurturing promotional campaign across all of your channels. And the closer that you get to the webinar, the more you want to amplify that content up. So within, 3 days before, a reminder, within 24 hours, a reminder. And when you're going live, a reminder. People forget. We all forget. So it's really, really important to look at absolutely everything on each of your channels as a nurturing campaign too. And don't forget your website too. So if you have a blog post or topics that are on the webinar, that are relevant to the webinar, make sure that you're going ahead and optimizing those. Super important that they're refreshed, and make sure you also have a clear call to action. What do you want your target audience to do next? And make sure to use other promotional features on your website. So often when we're running our webinars, we just have a pop-up page that either comes across on the homepage or specific pages where we choose that are relevant for that target audience. So just think of every single touch point that your audience has and show up there and tell them about it. And there are other things which are really, really subtle, but really important too. So for us at Content 10X, our employees are also everything. So we use them as our marketing. So we update our email signatures. We do direct outreach to our clients and previous clients. We do employee-generated content. So I'll often write LinkedIn posts myself or reshare posts from the company account. And we also update our LinkedIn headers too. So it's almost kind of like a treasure trove of all of these different opportunities that you can use to promote it. But we quite often don't see any of our some of our clients and some of you guys out there using enough of these. Webinars are not a one-hit wonder, and you want to reach out to as many touch points for your target audience as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Treat it as the big event that it is, and every possibility that you have. I love what you said there, Hayley. The smaller things as well, like just updating the LinkedIn header, updating email signatures, because it's kind of obvious to go to organic social and do some LinkedIn posts and things like that. But there's the not so obvious things that, like you said, sometimes just get missed, but they're so easy. So all of that, super, super important. So then there's also collaborations as well. So working with partners, working with sponsors, are there co-marketing opportunities for this webinar? There might be some newsletters that you could get mentioned in as well. So think about that, industry newsletters of partners, things like that. Could you collab on social content with industry brands, influencers? If this is going to be a really useful webinar that we talked about in the last episode that really hits on a pain point and is going to be serving your audience, then there's no reason why people wouldn't share this if it's useful. They have a similar audience and they trust you and they know that it's going to be great content and it's going to be dead valuable. Then, you don't ask, don't get. So reach out to some of the brands, influencers, people that you've worked with in the past and partners, and see if there's any kind of collaborative content or promo or cross promo that you could do. And within that, Hayley, you already mentioned this, but the employee advocacy. So it's not just your company and maybe like C-suite within the company that are posting about this and brand pages and things like that, but having a program to encourage and help employees across the organisation. If it's a large organisation, at least people like the sales representative are sharing all of this on their LinkedIn and in their emails, etc. So making use of the people within the company. And then who's speaking on this? Like, is it a panel discussion? Is it an interview with certain leaders? Who's getting involved in the webinar? And are you making a plan in place for them to hopefully help promote it? It depends what arrangement you have with the speakers, if you have any, that are out external to the company. So if you bring in outside industry speakers, how are they going to promote it and help it? And can you work with them and create content with them and things like that? Because that's a whole new, source of channel and opportunity to get this webinar in front of different audiences, and also just get more authority behind it as well from those guys that are getting involved. Another thing, thinking about PR, if you work with a PR agency, you're obviously going to want to sit down and involve them and tell them this is coming up and work with them to make sure that they develop a plan. If you don't work with a PR agency, perhaps you're doing it in-house, of course, do exactly the same, and just look at those other opportunities. And that doesn't, from a PR perspective, just involve being mentioned in like publications and on other sites and things like that. It could be getting involved in things like podcasts and YouTube videos. So are there some industry podcasts that you could manage to come on and have a discussion about this webinar coming up? Are the dynamic ad opportunities as well? Because obviously it's a point in time, once the webinar's done, the messaging changes. So some of this evergreen content, you need to think about the dynamic aspect of promoting it. But there's so much beyond. I guess we've talked about owned and also earned content opportunities, but there's a loads of different channels. But then, of course, you need to have the content to fulfill those channels, don't you, Hayley?
Absolutely. And just touching back on employee advocacy, and something that we chatted about during our expert interview series, is to be mindful as a brand that you are going to have a certain amount of followers as your brand, but your employees themselves could potentially have more followers than you do on channels, and the combined reach is much larger. So it's really, really important. Obviously, this is for the webinar. You want to get the reach out there as much as possible. So do think about it in that respect of which are your strongest employees, and make sure that they're on board in terms of sharing this content. But talking about the content that you need to create, there's a lot, which we absolutely love. And, it can be from social graphics, carousels, which obviously perform really, really well, vertical videos and adverts, but test the creative as well. So make sure that you're doing a couple of different creative options and a couple of different copy options too, because again, what we want to do is see as much data as possible coming from this. So changing one variable on it, so whether it's just that you're changing the creative on one of it or changing the copy on the other, and seeing what the audience really engaged with. But one thing that we've recommended doing with a previous client, which was really great, is that just remembering us as humans, that these webinars are really live events and they're really high pressured environments. And, it's quite a lot of pressure for any of, yourself or your team members to be doing this presenting live. And quite often, sometimes that we find because of that high pressure nature, sometimes the outputs are not as relaxed as they could usually be. And so actually what we do suggest to do is to hop on like a 10-15 minute call and actually talk with whoever's presenting the webinar about the webinar that they're presenting. Quite often it's kind of like I guess we could say like a mini expert interview as such, but quite often they're much more relaxed, they're much more engaging, and they can talk a little bit more outside of the webinar about what the webinar promotion is going to be. So have a think about that. Can you grab that person for literally 10-15 minutes to grab as much content as possible? And you can start planning that pre and post event promotion plan as well with it. But think about it from a social aspect and an engagement aspect. On that high pressure environment, are you going to get the best quality content, or is it just worth a 10-15 minute call ahead to see if you can get any more engaging content out of them? So that's really kind of covering off, I guess, all of the social touch points. But you need to make sure that the landing page for that webinar is really compelling. You know, it's got all of the information that you need to. It's not overwhelming, but it's also got a clear call to action. So how do people attend that webinar? So what's the sign up functionality that they've got? And obviously, once they've signed up to the webinar, let them know that they've signed up to the webinar. Don't ghost them. We want to see an immediate email that's sent direct to them of thank you so much, because, you know, this is people's time. They need to have that kind of nurturing aspect. So thank them for signing up to the email, and have a nurturing email campaign as well that goes along that. But also on the other aspect, you've also got a huge newsletter audience as well. And you also want to be writing a campaign directly to them to persuade people to sign up in the first place. So look at it from two aspects as well. Make sure that you're nurturing everybody as much as possible. And make sure those campaigns, like I mentioned before, are not a one-hit wonder.
Yeah.
So we want more than one email sent to them, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought so. It's just human nature. This is all people, isn't it? And signing up to something, if it's in a bit of time. I mean, even if I signed up to something today, I'd still kind of expect to get a reminder tomorrow just to remind me. So that's super, super important. And then, of course, you have to plan the follow-up as well. So we're doing all this work to see if we can encourage our ideal clients and prospects to attend and, well, to sign up to this webinar. The follow-up needs to be really well planned. So the marketing doesn't end with the webinar. It doesn't end when the webinar is over, because firstly, you may be marketing the replay too. So you're going to want to be planning all of that. You need a plan for following up with the no-shows. So if they didn't show up, what's the plan there? Are you going to consider a recap? So possibly send a recap email and a full replay or a link to a replay, whatever your plan is. What do we do with the no-shows? And then you need to follow up with those who showed up as well. They showed up, so it wouldn't be the same follow-up. Consider maybe sharing more of a deeper dive into what was covered, adding a bit more detail, adding more value, following up with an additional resource. If you got, use from the webinar content, then we're sharing some more content with you. So, it's going to be different depending on whether they signed up or not. So to do this, in part of the planning, you need to be prepared really quickly to segment your registrants as well into the shows and the no-shows. And it depends what platform you use. Of course, some platforms are going to be great at that. Other platforms, maybe that is a bit more of a manual process of comparing, making a note of who's turned up against the list. But you need to know all of this in advance so you can segment fairly quickly and do those follow-ups. And for the people who did turn up, maybe you can ask for feedback as well. For the people who didn't turn up, you could ask for feedback as to why they couldn't make it as well. Is it just not the right time of day? Was it intentional? I mentioned on the last episode, I'm definitely a classic person that signs up to things with the full intention of only the replay and not actually turning up. But that always depends as well on what the topic is. I also wanted to mention that often we're not talking about high volume here as well. It's a B2B space. We're talking about often really niche subjects and topics where it is definitely not a volume play. It's just a quality play of who you want to be in the room, so to speak, consuming that content in the virtual room. So follow-ups can be personal as well. If you were expecting, I don't know, like 40 or 50 people to attend the webinar, it's super niche, and that's about a good number. And 10, 15, 20 turn up, there's no reason really, apart from obviously time and resource, but why there couldn't be personal follow-ups to them. Turn off the automation and send, or at least segment those, and get in touch personally with these people and ask a more personal question about what they found from the webinar, and send them follow-up information that's even more relevant to them, because you've just had a bit more of a look at what they do and their website and things like that. So, you know, depending on volumes, or at least depending on segmenting, the follow-up could be personal in some regards too. But yeah, this is super important, as we've gone through the channels of how you can get in touch and sort of communicate before the webinar, all the different ways that you can market and the different content that you can create. You know, there's the plan afterwards as well for this follow-up. And then, of course, we're going to go way into it, aren't we, Hayley? But there's the repurposing side as well, which is a big thing in itself.
It really, really is. And just touching back on your comment there as well, because it's really important to understand. We mentioned it right at the beginning of the first episode of this series, that we didn't put it in priority order, but the number one thing is the lead generation for this. And as Amy mentioned, if you've got, 10 to 50 attendees, they are super warm leads. And if you can strike a direct conversation with those, it's really important to do. And so strike while the iron's hot within the first 24 hours of your webinar, and see if you can get that conversation going. That's really, really important to really nurture those leads. And also, just on touching on the feedback as well, we're asking for your audience feedback, but also do make sure that you have internal feedback too. Kind of, what were the hits and misses? What did you learn from running this webinar that you can implement into the next one as well? Everything's super important for understanding and moving forward. And yeah, absolutely. In the next episode, we're talking everything repurposing, one of our favorite subjects as well. So everything that you're going to be needing to include in your follow-up after the event. So think about email sequences, sharing some of the repurposed content there, blog post summaries, highlight videos, and also looking at kind of post-webinar social content. So if you're doing a replay, you're going to be able to execute your marketing plan straight away for the replay, and finding different ways to engage with this audience to get ideas for future webinars too, which is all coming in the next episode.
Yeah, absolutely. And it all really joins together, it all pins together, because, when you are planning what you are going to do with this content, this webinar, the repurposing, you need to know what you plan to create from the get-go, as we've said already, to feature into the follow-up plan and things like that too. So it all joins up. And if you are going to be doing a replay, so if that's just going to be the next big thing that you're advertising, all the things that you said, Hayley, earlier about looking at all the channels, when we were talking about, there's looking at social channels, there's looking at email, there's looking at all the A/B testing that you would do, and website the possibilities, email, small things like email signatures and banners and things like that. If you're going to go straight to the marketing of a replay, it's almost like a very quick switch, a flick of the switch, isn't it? It is coming to go and watch our on-demand webinar and whatever you want to call it too. So it's kind of like a flick of a switch, and need to plan for that. We're going to talk all about those repurposing opportunities in the next episode. So hopefully our aim with this episode was to provide lots of good advice for promoting the B2B webinar and the all-important follow-up. So we hope this has been really, really useful. In the next episode, as we said, we'll look into repurposing. And if you haven't checked them out already, then check out our episodes earlier on in this series on all the reasons why B2B webinars are just so fantastic and so beneficial, and also the planning of the webinar itself. So make sure to check out this whole series, because it's really valuable content that we're kind of putting out in a sequential way. And don't forget to get a copy as well, a free download of our B2B webinar planning playbook. So head to content10x.com/webinar guide and you'll be able to download that playbook. And we're really proud of that, aren't we? It's a super useful guide, isn't it, Hayley, for anyone who wants to do a B2B webinar?
Yeah, it is absolutely the best guide. It's got a super handy checklist. So when you're listening to all of these episodes, you don't need to worry about anything in the future, because just go to and download that, and it's got a great little checklist for you. So it makes planning your webinars super seamless.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, if you want further help, if you want to go beyond our download and our free content, this series, associated blog posts and things like that, and you want actual hands-on help with your webinar, with webinar series or any other type of content. So if you want help with video podcasts or research reports or running even in-person events, do get in touch with us. So at Content 10X, this is exactly what we do. We help with the strategy and planning of content. We provide end-to-end content repurposing support, and we also create content from scratch and do a done with you service as well, where we'll interview experts within your company and create loads of fantastic content. So if you want any help with that, please don't hesitate. Just go to content10x.com/inquiry, and we'd love to speak with you. So please do get in touch. So that's a wrap for part 3 of this webinar series, and we're really looking forward to part 4, all about repurposing. So thank you again, Hayley. It's been great having you on the podcast.
Thanks again for having me. I absolutely love doing them.
No, it's great having a co-host and so much value. So we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone.